Single mother of 7-year-old twins delivers food to the wrong mansion. The millionaire uncovers a secret that shatters him. Before we get started, leave a comment and tell us where in the world you're watching from. Let's begin. Jessica Taylor pedaled furiously through Boston's rain-slicked streets, her worn-out bicycle tires splashing through puddles as she raced to deliver yet another meal order. In the front basket, protected by nothing more than a thin plastic sheet, 7-year-old twins, Lily and Emma, huddled together, their identical blonde heads touching as they tried to stay dry. "Mommy, how many more deliveries?" Lily asked, her voice bright despite the dismal weather. Unlike her quieter sister Emma, who observed the world with thoughtful blue eyes, Lily met each day with unstoppable enthusiasm. "Just 2 more, sweetheart," Jessica replied, forcing cheerfulness into her voice despite the exhaustion weighing down her limbs. "Then we'll head home and have hot chocolate. How does that sound? With marshmallows?" Emma's soft voice barely carried over the patter of rain. Jessica's heart clenched. They'd run out of marshmallows days ago, but she couldn't bear to disappoint them again. "I'll see what I can do," she promised. Since Greg had walked out 2 years ago, trading his family for his younger secretary and a new life, Jessica had been working herself to the bone. Mornings cleaning houses, afternoons delivering food, weekends baking custom treats, 3 jobs barely keeping them afloat in their tiny apartment. As she approached the towering glass restaurant at the end of the street, Jessica whispered the same promise she made every day. "Someday, my little loves, we'll have a real home again. Someday you won't have to ride in a bicycle basket in the rain." Emma reached out a small hand to touch her mother's arm. "It's okay, Mommy. We like adventures." Jessica blinked back tears as she locked her bicycle. With daughters like these, how could she ever lose hope? The sky erupted with lightning as Jessica struggled to see the address on her delivery app. Her glasses, foggy from rain and breath, made the numbers blur together. The storm had intensified, turning Boston's elegant Beacon Hill into a maze of shadows and streaming water. "Turn left here," called Lily, who had appointed herself navigator despite being unable to read the map. Jessica obeyed, wheeling her bicycle down what appeared to be a private drive leading to a towering Georgian mansion with lights glowing from within. She had never delivered to this part of town before. "This can't be right," Jessica muttered, but the twins were already scrambling out of the basket, seeking shelter under the mansion's imposing portico. Before Jessica could stop them, the massive oak door swung open. An older woman in a housekeeper's uniform appeared, her face lined with worry. "Thank goodness you're here," she exclaimed, ushering them inside without questioning. "I was beginning to think the agency had forgotten us entirely." "I think there's been a mistake," Jessica began, but was interrupted by the sound of heart-wrenching sobs echoing through the marble hallway. The housekeeper, who introduced herself as Margaret, wrung her hands. "She hasn't stopped crying for days. Mr. Blackwood is at his wit's end." Jessica tried again to explain she was just a food delivery person, but the twins had already vanished deeper into the house, following the sound of the crying child. "Emma! Lily! Come back here!" Jessica called, hurrying after them through opulent rooms that made her tiny apartment seem like a matchbox. She found them in a bedroom that could have been featured in a luxury magazine. In the center, a little girl with tear-stained cheeks sat surrounded by expensive toys. Her sobs momentarily paused as she stared at the identical visitors who had suddenly appeared in her doorway. "Hi, I'm Lily, and this is Emma." "Why are you crying?" Lily asked, climbing onto the bed without hesitation. "Lily," Jessica whispered urgently, "we shouldn't be here." Heavy footsteps approached, and a tall man appeared in the doorway. His tailored suit couldn't hide the exhaustion in his posture, and his handsome face was etched with grief. "Who are you people?" he demanded, but then stopped as he noticed something miraculous. His daughter had stopped crying. The little girl was watching the twins with wonder, as if they were magical creatures who had appeared from another world. Jessica stood frozen, clutching her delivery bag as the man's piercing blue eyes assessed her from head to toe. "I'm so sorry for the confusion," she began. "I was delivering food and—" "Are you good with children?" he interrupted, his voice suddenly desperate. Before Jessica could answer, fate decided her course. Emma, her shy, cautious daughter, had taken the crying girl's hand in hers. "I deliver food," Jessica stammered, suddenly very aware of her rain-soaked clothes dripping onto the immaculate hardwood floor. "There's been a misunderstanding. I'm not from the agency." The man, Mr. Blackwood, she presumed, didn't seem to hear her. His gaze was fixed on his daughter, who had stopped crying for what appeared to be the first time in ages. "Charlotte hasn't been quiet in days," he said quietly, almost to himself. Almost. Then turning to Jessica with an intensity that made her step back. "I don't care who you are or where you came from. Can you make her stop crying like this again?" Jessica looked at the little girl, Charlotte, who appeared about 6 years old. Her designer nightgown probably cost more than Jessica's monthly rent, but her eyes held the universal sadness of a child in pain. "I'm Jessica Taylor," she finally said. "And these are my daughters, Lily and Emma." Margaret stepped forward. "Mr. Blackwood, I'm terribly sorry. I thought she was the new nanny from the agency." Mr. Blackwood waved away her apology. "The agency has sent 5 nannies in the past month. None lasted more than 3 days." His voice hardened as he added, "Apparently, dealing with a grieving child wasn't in their job description." Jessica felt a sudden chill. There was something heavy in this house, something sad that seemed to permeate the walls despite the luxurious surroundings. Charlotte had edged closer to Emma, who was showing her a small paper crane she'd folded from a delivery receipt. The two sat in silent communication while Lily chatted away, seemingly oblivious to the tension in the room. "Mr. Blackwood, I'm Nathan Blackwood, CEO of Blackwood Enterprises," the man said abruptly, extending his hand. "And I'm prepared to offer you triple whatever you're making now to stay tonight and help with Charlotte." Jessica's mind reeled. Triple her combined income from 3 jobs for 1 night? "I have no experience as a nanny," she admitted. "I'm a cleaner in the mornings, a delivery person in the afternoons, and I bake on weekends." Something in Nathan's eyes softened slightly. "You're also clearly a mother who's doing everything she can for her children. That's the experience I'm interested in." Before Jessica could respond, Lily piped up, "Why doesn't Charlotte have any mommies or daddies to help her stop crying?" The room went deadly silent. Jessica wanted to sink through the floor. Nathan's face hardened into a mask of controlled grief, and Margaret looked away quickly. "Charlotte's mother went to heaven last year," Nathan finally said, his voice carefully measured. "And her father. Her father is trying his best," Margaret interjected gently, placing a hand on Nathan's shoulder. Jessica suddenly understood. This beautiful mansion, filled with everything money could buy, was missing the one thing Charlotte needed most. The same thing Jessica worked 3 jobs to provide for her own daughters: stability and love. Charlotte had moved to sit between the twins now, touching Emma's paper crane with wonder. It was the first interest she'd shown in anything, according to Margaret's whispered explanation. "Mr. Blackwood, I should really get back to my deliveries," Jessica said, though the storm outside had worsened considerably. "Stay the night," he insisted, not as a request but with the confidence of a man used to getting his way. "There are plenty of rooms. We can discuss a more formal arrangement in the morning." Jessica thought of her tiny apartment with its leaking ceiling and the eviction notice that had arrived that morning. She thought of her daughters sharing a pull-out sofa while she slept on a chair. She thought of the 3 jobs that still weren't enough. "I'll stay tonight," she agreed, knowing she was stepping into something that would change their lives forever. But just for tonight. As Margaret led them to adjoining guest rooms larger than their entire apartment, Jessica caught Charlotte watching the twins with hungry eyes. Not the hunger of poverty Jessica knew so well, but the starvation of loneliness. "Mommy, can Charlotte sleep in our room?" Lily asked. For the first time since they'd arrived, something like hope flickered across Nathan Blackwood's face. Jessica couldn't sleep that night. The guest room was larger than her entire apartment, with a bed so soft it felt like floating on a cloud, but her mind raced with possibilities and fears. Around midnight, she slipped out to check on her daughters. The room connecting to hers was silent. Inside, she found a sight that squeezed her heart. Emma, Lily, and Charlotte all curled together in one bed despite three being available. Charlotte's small hand was clutched in Emma's, their breathing synchronized in sleep. A sound behind her made Jessica turn. Nathan stood in the doorway, his imposing frame softened by obvious exhaustion. "She hasn't slept through the night since Victoria died," he whispered. "The accident was a year ago. Charlotte was in the car too." Jessica felt a chill. "I'm so sorry." "She hasn't spoken a word since. The psychologists say it's trauma." His voice cracked slightly. "I've hired the best specialists, but nothing has helped until tonight." They moved to the hallway, closing the door quietly behind them. "Mr. Blackwood." "Nathan, please." "Nathan, I need to be honest. I'm not qualified for this job. I was delivering food when your housekeeper mistook me for a nanny." He nodded slowly. "I figured as much. The agency I called is very exclusive. Their nannies don't usually arrive soaking wet with children in tow." A hint of a smile touched his lips before fading. "But Charlotte connected with your daughters immediately. That's more qualification than any resume could provide." Jessica took a deep breath. "I could stay for 1 week to help Charlotte transition to a proper nanny. I'll pay you triple what you're making now, plus room and board for you and your daughters." When Jessica's eyes widened, he added, "Margaret mentioned your 3 jobs. That says a lot about your character." "What about school for my girls?" "Charlotte attends Westmont Academy. Your daughters could enroll there too." Jessica's heart skipped. Westmont was one of Boston's most prestigious private schools, completely out of reach for a single mother working 3 jobs. "I need to make a call," she said finally. In the quiet kitchen, Jessica called her older sister Claire. "You're where?" Claire exclaimed after Jessica explained. "It's just for a week," Jessica insisted, though something inside her hoped otherwise. "The money would catch us up on rent, and the girls would have a chance at a good school." "And when the week ends?" "What then, Jess?" "Then we go back to reality." Jessica sighed. "But for 1 week, my girls can sleep in warm beds and attend a school where nobody makes fun of their second-hand clothes." After hanging up, Jessica found Nathan in his study, surrounded by papers. "I'll stay for 1 week," she told him. "But I need to be clear. I'm not what you think I am." Nathan looked up, his blue eyes tired but determined. "None of us are, Ms. Taylor. But for Charlotte's sake, I'm willing to take that chance." As Jessica returned to her room, she knew she was walking a tightrope. 1 week in this mansion could change everything, or it could end with broken hearts all around. On the 3rd night, Jessica found herself wandering the mansion's corridors, unable to sleep. The grandeur still overwhelmed her. Crystal chandeliers, casting soft light on priceless paintings, furniture that belonged in museums rather than homes. She paused at an open door, warm light spilling into the hallway. Inside, Nathan sat hunched over his desk, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up, looking more human than the untouchable CEO she'd first met. "You should get some rest," she said softly. Nathan looked up, startled. "I could say the same to you." "The girls are sound asleep. Charlotte, too." Something like gratitude flickered across his face. "That's something of a miracle. Would you like some tea?" Minutes later, they sat in plush chairs, steaming cups between them. For the first time, Jessica saw past the expensive suit to the exhausted father beneath. "I wasn't always." Nathan gestured vaguely at their surroundings. "All this?" "No. I grew up in South Boston. My father was a dock worker." He smiled faintly. "I built Blackwood Enterprises from nothing but student loans and stubborn determination." "Then you met Victoria," Jessica said quietly. Nathan's face changed, pain etching deeper lines around his eyes. "Victoria Harrington, Boston aristocracy. Her family has been here since the Mayflower." Jessica listened as he described meeting Victoria at a charity function, their whirlwind romance, the marriage that merged old money with new ambition. The business exploded after that. Her connections opened doors I couldn't have approached otherwise. He stared into his tea. But that's not why I loved her. Of course not. When she died, his voice faltered. Part of me died with her. And the worst part is, I know I'm failing Charlotte. You're trying. I can barely look at her, he confessed, the words seemingly torn from somewhere deep. She looks exactly like Victoria. Same eyes, same smile. Every time I see her, I see what I've lost. Jessica suddenly understood the heaviness in the mansion, the reason for Charlotte's silence. So she lost her mother to death and her father to grief, Jessica said softly. Nathan flinched as if struck. I'm sorry, she backtracked. That was inappropriate. No. His voice was rough. It was honest, and you're right. As Jessica returned to her room later, she realized she was seeing Nathan Blackwood, not as the billionaire CEO the world knew, but as a broken man trying desperately to put himself back together for his daughter's sake. She also realized, with a sinking feeling, that she was beginning to care about both father and daughter far more than was wise for someone who would be leaving in just 4 more days. 1 week had stretched into 2, then 3. Jessica had long since called the restaurants she delivered for to explain her absence. With each passing day, the routine grew more comfortable, like a perfectly fitting glove none of them wanted to remove. The changes in Charlotte were subtle, but significant. Though she still hadn't spoken, she now communicated through small gestures, drawings, and a silent language that she shared with the twins. She'd begun to smile occasionally, especially around Emma, who seemed to understand Charlotte's quiet ways instinctively. Jessica introduced structure where there had been chaos. Regular mealtimes in the sunny breakfast room rather than trays, sent up to Charlotte's bedroom, scheduled outdoor play in the mansion's sprawling garden, and most importantly, consistency. You've done in 3 weeks what 5 specialists couldn't accomplish in a year, Nathan remarked one evening as they watched the girls chasing fireflies on the lawn. Children need routine, Jessica said simply, and they need to know they're safe. Is that why the others left, because I didn't provide that? Jessica hesitated. Margaret had shared stories about the previous nannies, how Nathan's demanding standards and midnight interrogations about Charlotte's progress had driven them away one by one. They left because caring for a grieving child is difficult, she answered diplomatically, and because you intimidated them. Nathan looked surprised. I intimidated them? You're Nathan Blackwood. Your reputation precedes you. A small smile touched his lips. And yet here you are, telling me I've been doing it all wrong. Not wrong, Jessica corrected. Just like someone who's hurting too much to see clearly. Later that night, as Jessica tucked Charlotte into bed between the twins, the 3 girls now refused to sleep separately, Nathan appeared in the doorway. Thank you, he said quietly. For the first time since Victoria died, I feel like there might be hope. Jessica felt a warmth bloom in her chest, followed immediately by a stab of guilt. She still hadn't told him the complete truth about herself, about the eviction notice, about her desperate financial situation before arriving, hear about her lack of any formal childcare training. Each day she promised herself she would come clean. Each day she found another reason to wait. As she closed the girls' bedroom door, Jessica realized with a jolt that she was no longer counting down the days until her week was over. Somehow she had started counting the days she'd been allowed to stay in this beautiful world where her daughters thrived, and a broken little girl was slowly healing. And where Nathan Blackwood, with his guarded smiles and wounded heart, was becoming dangerously important to her own. The art supplies Jessica had ordered arrived on a Tuesday morning. She'd noticed Charlotte watching Emma draw with stubby pencils and thought proper materials might encourage both girls' creativity. Nathan had immediately approved the purchase, as he did with anything that might help Charlotte. Emma and Charlotte sat at the sunroom table, colorful papers spread before them, while Lily danced around the room, more interested in performing than creating. Jessica watched from the doorway, struck by how similar Emma and Charlotte looked despite having no blood relation. Both quiet observers, both communicating more through expression than words. "What are you drawing, sweetie?" Jessica asked, kneeling beside Charlotte. The little girl hesitated, then pushed her drawing forward. Jessica's breath caught in her throat. The paper showed a car, upside down, with two stick figures inside. Rain fell in angry blue streaks around them. "Is this?" Jessica couldn't finish the question. Charlotte nodded, her eyes filling with tears. She pointed to the smaller figure, then to herself. "You were in the car," Jessica whispered. "With your mom." "Another," nodded Emma, sensing Charlotte's distress, took her hand and squeezed it. Then, to Jessica's amazement, Emma made a series of small gestures with her fingers. Charlotte responded with similar movements. "What was that?" Jessica asked. "It's our secret language," Emma explained softly. "I told her it wasn't her fault." "Why would she think it was her fault?" Emma looked at Charlotte, who nodded permission. "She thinks the car crashed because she was crying about her doll. She thinks her mommy got distracted." Jessica fought back tears. So much guilt for such tiny shoulders to bear. Later that evening, Nathan found Lily sitting cross-legged in front of Charlotte in the library, making funny faces. "What are you doing?" he asked, bemused. "Teaching Charlotte how to laugh again," Lily declared. She forgot how. Nathan watched as his daughter's lips twitched upward at Lily's antics. "Sometimes," Lily continued wisely, "people forget how to be happy, so we have to lend them our happy until they remember their own." Nathan stood frozen, struck by the simple wisdom of a 7-year-old. His eyes met Jessica's across the room, and something passed between them. Understanding, connection, perhaps even something deeper. "Out of the mouths of babes," Jessica said softly. "Where did she learn that?" Nathan asked. Jessica smiled sadly. When their father left, Lily decided Emma needed to borrow her happiness for a while. She's been lending it ever since. That night, after the girls were asleep, Nathan found a folded paper on his desk. Inside was Charlotte's drawing of the accident, but now something new had been added. A small rainbow arching over the scene, and the words, "Not your fault," printed in Emma's careful handwriting. For the first time since Victoria's death, Nathan, Blackwood, wept openly, the walls he'd built around his heart beginning to crumble. "I was thinking," Nathan said, standing awkwardly in the doorway of the kitchen where Jessica was helping the girls decorate cookies on Sunday morning. He'd abandoned his usual suit for dark jeans and a cashmere sweater, looking younger and far less intimidating. "You're not working today?" Jessica asked, surprised. In the month she'd been at the mansion, Nathan had worked every weekend, appearing only briefly to check on Charlotte before disappearing again into his study. "I thought we might go to the Boston Public Garden. All of us." The suggestion sounded like a question, uncertain and hopeful. 3 little heads turned simultaneously, eyes wide with excitement. "Can we feed the ducks?" Lily asked immediately. "The swan boats," Emma added, her voice unusually animated. Charlotte didn't speak, but her eyes shone with anticipation as she looked between her father and Jessica. "I think that sounds wonderful," Jessica said, carefully hiding her surprise. This wasn't the Nathan Blackwood who kept the world at arm's length. This was someone new, or perhaps someone old, re-emerging after a long absence. An hour later, they strolled through the gardens. Winding paths, Jessica couldn't help but notice how the 5 of them must look to outsiders, like a perfect family enjoying a perfect day. The thought both warmed and frightened her. Near the lagoon, Charlotte suddenly tugged on Nathan's hand and pointed. "The swan boats," he translated, though it was obvious what had caught her attention. "Would you like to ride one?" Charlotte nodded vigorously. As they glided across the water, Jessica watched Nathan watching his daughter. He seemed to be memorizing every expression that crossed her face, as if making up for a year of missed connections. "Thank you," he said quietly to Jessica when the girls were distracted by a passing duck. "I can't remember the last time I did something like this with her. Before the accident? Even before that." Regret shadowed his features. I was always too busy building the business, securing our future. Victoria was the one who did these things. It's never too late to start, Jessica said gently. After the boat ride, they found a quiet spot under a willow tree for the picnic lunch Margaret had packed. The girls ran around playing an elaborate game of their own invention, with Lily directing, and Emma and Charlotte following along. "Look, she's smiling," Nathan whispered, watching Charlotte chasing after Emma. Indeed, Charlotte's face had transformed, her eyes bright with childish delight. When Lily said something particularly funny, Charlotte's shoulders shook in silent laughter. "Dad! Dad!" Lily called, running over. Though she'd only known Nathan a month, she'd adopted the term with characteristic Lily enthusiasm. "Watch this." She proceeded to do a series of cartwheels that grew progressively wobblier until she collapsed in a giggling heap at Nathan's feet. "Ta-da!" she announced dramatically. Nathan laughed, a real laugh that crinkled the corners of his eyes and revealed a dimple in his left cheek. The sound made everyone freeze momentarily, as if witnessing a rare natural phenomenon. Charlotte stared at her father with wonder, then did something that changed everything. She smiled directly at him, for the first time since the accident. Nathan's laughter faded into something more profound as he held his daughter's gaze. Jessica watched them silently reconnecting, father and daughter finding their way back to each other through the simple bridge of a smile. Later, as they walked back through the garden with tired children trailing behind them, Nathan's hand brushed against Jessica's. She felt the contact like an electric current, and when their eyes met, she knew he'd felt it too. Jessica's heart raced as she realized she was falling for this complicated man with his wounded heart and guarded smiles. She had promised herself after Greg's betrayal that she would never again be so foolish, never again trust a man with her heart or her children's futures. Yet here she was, standing in the golden afternoon light, imagining possibilities that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. The storm rolled in without warning, dark clouds smothering the evening sky. Lightning flashed, illuminating the mansion in stark white bursts, followed by thunder that rattled the windows. Jessica was reading in her room when her door creaked open. Charlotte stood there in her nightgown, eyes wide with fear, clutching her teddy bear. "Are you scared of the storm, sweetheart?" Jessica asked gently. Charlotte nodded, flinching as another thunderclap shook the house. "Come here." Jessica patted the space beside her. Charlotte didn't hesitate, climbing onto the bed and pressing close to Jessica's side. Moments later, the twins appeared, Lily dragging a reluctant Emma. "Emma's scared of the thunder," Lily announced, though Jessica suspected it was Lily herself, who needed comfort. "Then you'd better join us too." Jessica smiled, making room for her daughters. Just as they settled, a knock sounded at the door. Nathan stood there, looking uncertain. "Charlotte wasn't in her room," he explained. "I wanted to make sure she was okay." "Dad," Lily patted the end of the bed, "join our thunder party." Something in Nathan's expression softened. "A thunder party?" "Yeah, when the sky makes big noises, we have to be louder," Lily declared. Nathan hesitated, then stepped inside. "I'm not sure Charlotte's room is the best place. We're in my room," Jessica corrected. Nathan blinked, suddenly noticing the simpler decor. "Oh, I apologize for intruding." "You're not intruding," Jessica said. "Besides, Lily has declared a thunder party and she's very persuasive." When another thunderclap made Charlotte tremble, Nathan made his decision. What exactly happens at a thunder party? An hour later, the formal living room had been transformed. Blankets draped between furniture created a makeshift tent. Flashlights cast star-like patterns on the ceiling, and all 5 of them nestled inside, telling stories as the storm raged. "When I was about your age," Nathan told the girls, "my dad and I would sit on our apartment steps during storms, counting seconds between lightning and thunder." "Why?" Emma asked softly. "To figure out how far away the storm was," he explained. "Each second means the lightning is about a mile farther away." Charlotte watched him with rapt attention, her fears seemingly forgotten. Jessica shared stories of her childhood dreams of becoming a pastry chef, how she'd practiced making tiny cakes in an easy-bake oven her sister had saved up to buy her. The girls drifted to sleep. Jessica and Nathan continued talking in hushed tones. "My greatest fear," Nathan confessed, "is that I'll never be the father Charlotte deserves." "And mine," Jessica whispered, "is that despite everything I do, my girls will never have the stability they need." Their eyes met in the dim light. Vulnerabilities, exposed like open wounds. Nathan leaned closer, drawn by something neither could name. Jessica's heart thundered louder than the storm outside, as the space between them narrowed. Just before their lips met, a particularly violent thunderclap shook the house, waking Lily, who sat up with a theatrical gasp. The moment broken, they pulled apart, but something had shifted between them. A boundary crossed, a possibility acknowledged. Jessica knew she was on dangerous ground. She was still keeping secrets, still pretending to be someone she wasn't. And yet, in this moment, with the storm raging outside and this makeshift family huddled safe within, she had never felt more authentically herself. "Close your eyes," Nathan instructed as he led Jessica down a hallway she hadn't explored before. "What's this about?" she asked, both curious and apprehensive. They'd been careful around each other since that almost kiss during the thunderstorm a week ago. "Just trust me," he said softly. Jessica allowed herself to be guided through a doorway, the smell of polished steel and new appliances meeting her. "Nose, open them," Jessica gasped. Before her stood a professional kitchen that would make any pastry chef weep with joy. Gleaming stainless steel countertops, double ovens, a 6-burner stove, and every appliance imaginable. "What is this?" she whispered. "It was Victoria's project before." Nathan cleared his throat. She was renovating this wing to entertain. The kitchen was completed just before the accident, but we never used it. Jessica ran her fingers over the smooth marble surface of the central island. "It's beautiful. It's yours," Nathan said simply. "What?" Jessica turned to him, confused. "You told me about your dream of being a pastry chef. Now you have the space to create." Nathan seemed almost shy, so different from the commanding CEO the world knew. "Nathan, I can't accept this. You're not accepting anything. You're using an empty space that needs life in it." He stepped closer. "Besides, I have selfish motives. I remember the cookies you made with the girls. If living here means getting to taste your creations regularly, I consider it a fair exchange." Jessica laughed, emotion making her voice unsteady. No one had supported her dreams like this before. Greg had always dismissed her baking as a cute hobby that took time away from real responsibilities. That afternoon, Jessica experimented with recipes she'd only imagined before, filling the kitchen with heavenly smells. The girls joined her after their lessons, Charlotte watching with fascination as Jessica demonstrated how to properly fold whipped cream into chocolate mousse. "Would you like to try?" Jessica asked her. Charlotte nodded eagerly, taking the spatula. As she concentrated on the delicate task, her tongue poked out between her lips, an unconscious gesture that made her look so much like Emma that Jessica's heart squeezed. "That's perfect," Jessica praised. "You're a natural, Charlotte." Looking pleased, Charlotte reached for a nearby bowl of sugar, dipping her finger to taste. "Sweet," she said softly. Everyone froze. The single word hung in the air like something precious and fragile. "Charlotte?" Nathan had entered quietly, now standing, stunned in the doorway. "Sweet?" Charlotte repeated, pointing to the sugar, her voice raspy from disuse but unmistakable. Nathan crossed the kitchen in 3 long strides, kneeling before his daughter. "Yes, sweetheart, it's sweet." Tears glistened in his eyes. That evening, after the girls were asleep, Nathan found Jessica in the kitchen putting final touches on a batch of eclairs. "I've made some calls," he said. "A friend of mine owns Bellini's downtown. He's interested in featuring your desserts. Nathan, just hear me out. He owes me a favor, but after tasting your baking, he'll owe you one." Jessica looked at him, This complex man who had created a space for her dreams while nursing his own wounded heart back to life. Why are you doing all this for me? Nathan's gaze was steady. Because for the first time since Victoria died, there's light in this house. Again. And it came with you. Jessica adjusted the display of petit fours on the silver tray, each one a miniature work of art. In just 2 months, her desserts had become the talk of Boston's elite social circuit, appearing at charity galas and private parties. Tonight marked the largest event yet, a fundraiser for children's cancer research hosted by Blackwood Enterprises. The hotel ballroom sparkled with chandeliers and designer gowns, the wealthy and powerful of Boston mingling as waiters, circulated with champagne and Jessica's creations. Nathan stood across the room, commanding attention in his tailored tuxedo as he addressed potential donors. "These are exquisite," an elegantly dressed woman commented, selecting one of Jessica's lavender-infused macarons. "Are you the pastry chef?" "Yes, I'm Jessica Taylor." She extended her hand, still not entirely comfortable in this world of wealth and privilege. "Eleanor Harrington," the woman replied, her handshake cool and assessing. "You're new to the Boston scene." Something in the woman's tone made Jessica uneasy. "Yes, I've only recently started professionally." "And how did you come to cater a Blackwood event?" Nathan is notoriously selective about his business associates. Before Jessica could formulate a response, a familiar voice cut through the crowd. "Jessica? Jessica Taylor?" She turned to find herself face to face with Greg, her ex-husband. He looked prosperous in an expensive suit, a young blonde woman clutching his arm. The secretary he'd left her for now wearing a diamond ring that dwarfed the one he'd given Jessica. "I didn't expect to see you here," Greg said, his surprise quickly morphing into something smug. "Last I heard, you were delivering takeout." Jessica felt heat rise to her cheeks. Things change. Apparently. His gaze swept over her designer dress, a gift from Nathan she'd initially refused but eventually accepted for tonight's event. "How did our little delivery girl end up at Boston's social event of the season?" The blonde woman, Melissa, Jessica, recalled with a stab of old pain, tittered. "You're the one who delivers food? Greg told me about you." Eleanor Harrington was listening to the exchange with obvious interest. "You were a delivery person? How fascinating." Jessica forced a smile. "I've had several jobs. Being a single mother requires versatility." "Single mother?" Eleanor's perfectly arched eyebrows rose. "And how many children do you have, Ms. Taylor?" "2 daughters. Twins." Something shifted in Eleanor's expression. "And now you're Nathan Blackwood's pastry chef?" The way she said it made it sound like a euphemism for something sordid. "Ms. Taylor has been a tremendous asset to my household." Nathan's voice cut in smoothly as he appeared at Jessica's side. "Her talents extend far beyond her extraordinary baking." Eleanor turned to Nathan, her gaze sharp. "Nathan, darling, I wasn't aware you had hired new household staff, especially someone with such an unconventional background. Jessica is Charlotte's nanny, as well as an emerging culinary talent I'm proud to support." "Charlotte's nanny?" Eleanor's voice hardened. "My granddaughter's caretaker was selected by an agency with the highest credentials. I personally vetted the candidates." Jessica felt the floor tilt beneath her. Granddaughter. This elegant, hostile woman was Victoria's mother. "Eleanor, this isn't the place," Nathan began. "When did you hire this delivery person to care for Victoria's child? And why wasn't I informed?" Eleanor's voice remained pleasant, but her eyes were cold as she looked Jessica up and down. Greg watched the exchange with undisguised interest. "Wait, you're a nanny now? With no qualifications?" Jessica felt her carefully constructed new life beginning to crumble. "I should check on the dessert table," she murmured, trying to escape. Eleanor's hand shot out, gripping Jessica's wrist with surprising strength. "I think you should explain exactly who you are and how you managed to insert yourself into my granddaughter's life." Nathan gently but firmly removed Eleanor's hand from Jessica's arm. "This conversation is over, Eleanor. Jessica has been instrumental in Charlotte's recovery. She spoke her first word in over a year because of Jessica's care." "She what?" Eleanor looked genuinely shocked. "But the damage was done. By morning, Jessica knew her background would be thoroughly investigated by Eleanor Harrington, whose family connections ran deeper than the Atlantic. The truth would come out, all of it. As she slipped away to the kitchen, Jessica didn't see Nathan excuse himself to follow her, nor did she notice Greg watching them both with calculating eyes. Later, that night, Jessica paced her room at the mansion, unable to sleep. The clock showed 2:17 a.m. when a soft knock came at her door. Nathan stood there, his bow tie undone, looking exhausted. "We need to talk." In his study, he placed a manila folder on the desk between them. Inside was a photograph Jessica had kept, hidden in her few possessions. A family photo from her childhood, showing her parents and sister at their summer home before everything fell apart. "Where did you get this?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Eleanor had you investigated immediately after the event. This was in the report delivered to my office an hour ago." Jessica closed her eyes. "Nathan, I can explain." "The man in this photo," Nathan interrupted, his voice dangerously controlled, "is James Taylor. He worked for Victoria's father, Richard Harrington." Jessica nodded slowly. "My father worked for Harrington Financial for 15 years, until he helped orchestrate a financial maneuver that destroyed my family's shipping business and drove my father to suicide." Nathan's words fell like stones between them. Jessica stared at him in horror. "What? No, that's not possible. My father was an accountant. He died when I was 16, leaving us with nothing but debt. He died in disgrace after embezzlement charges were brought against him by Harrington Financial, charges that conveniently diverted attention from Richard Harrington's own questionable business practices." Nathan's eyes were cold. "Practices? That included systematically destroying small family businesses like ours to absorb their assets." The room seemed to spin around Jessica. "I didn't know. And now, by some cosmic joke, the daughter of the man who helped destroy my family is caring for the granddaughter of the man who orchestrated it all." Nathan laughed hollowly. "It's almost poetic. Nathan, please believe me. I had no idea. I want you and your daughters gone by morning." His voice was flat, final. "What about Charlotte? She needs—" "Don't." Nathan held up his hand. "Just don't." As Jessica stumbled back to her room, heart shattering, she heard a sound that completed her devastation. Charlotte's sobs echoing down the hallway, the silence of her grief broken at last. Rain pounded against the windows of Jessica's tiny apartment as she unpacked the few belongings they'd brought from the mansion. The contrast was jarring, from soaring ceilings and priceless art to water stains and peeling wallpaper. "Mommy, when are we going back to Charlotte's house?" Lily asked, her usual exuberance dimmed. "We're not, sweetheart." Jessica struggled to keep her voice steady. "This is our home now." "But Charlotte needs us," Emma said softly, her eyes troubled. "She'll be sad again." Jessica had no answer that wouldn't break their hearts further. The past week had been a blur of pain, hastily packing before dawn, Margaret's tearful goodbye, and worst of all, leaving without seeing Charlotte one last time. Nathan had remained locked in his study, his silence more devastating than any words could have been. Knock at the door startled them all. Jessica opened it to find Claire, her older sister, arms loaded with groceries. "You look terrible," Claire said bluntly, stepping inside. "Thanks." Jessica managed a weak smile. After the girls were occupied with a movie, Claire cornered Jessica in the kitchen. "What really happened? One minute you've landed in some fairy tale, the next you're back in this dump looking like someone died." "Just a case of mistaken identity that caught up with me," Jessica said, unwilling to burden her sister with the full, complicated truth. "Bull," Claire retorted. "You're heartbroken, and not just over a job." Jessica's composure cracked. The whole story spilled out. The mansion, Charlotte's healing, her growing feelings for Nathan, and the devastating revelation about their father's past connection. "So he threw you out because of something our father supposedly did decades ago?" Claire looked incredulous. "Without even listening to your side?" There is no my side. I knew nothing about any of it. Exactly. Claire slammed her hand on the counter. You were a kid when Dad died. We both were. How are you supposed to know anything about his work? Jessica shook her head. It doesn't matter now. It's over. But it wasn't over. 3 days later, as Jessica searched fruitlessly for new employment, her phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. Miss Taylor? This is Margaret from the Blackwood residence. Jessica's heart pounded. Is Charlotte okay? No, Margaret said softly. She's retreated completely. Won't eat, won't respond to anyone. She just stares out the window clutching that paper crane Emma made her. Jessica closed her eyes against fresh pain. I'm sorry, but I can't help. Mr. Blackwood made his position very clear. There's something else you should know, Margaret continued. I've worked for the Harringtons for 30 years. I was here when your father worked for Richard. Jessica gripped the phone tighter. And? The story Mr. Blackwood believes isn't the whole truth. Your father was set up to take the fall for decisions made by Richard Harrington himself. Everyone in the household knew it, but no one dared speak against the Harringtons. The world seemed to tilt on its axis as Margaret continued. Your father protected his family the only way he could, by accepting blame and walking away, just as you're doing now. After hanging up, Jessica sat motionless, her father's final words to her suddenly taking on new meaning. Sometimes the hardest choice is the right one, Jessie. Remember that. She had always thought he was talking about his decision to end his life. Now she wondered if he'd been talking about something else entirely, the choice to sacrifice himself to protect what he loved. 2 weeks after leaving the Blackwood mansion, Jessica's world collapsed further. Emma had been listless for days, picking at her food and sleeping more than usual. When a sudden fever spiked in the middle of the night, Jessica rushed her daughter to Boston Children's Hospital. Severe pneumonia, the doctor explained, his face grave. We need to admit her immediately. Jessica paced the sterile hospital corridor, Lily clutching her hand tightly. The mounting medical bills would destroy what little remained of their savings, but all that mattered was Emma's recovery. Mommy, is Emma going to be okay? Lily asked, her voice small. Of course she is, Jessica answered, wishing she felt as confident as she sounded. Emma's strong, just like you. But in a quiet way, Lily nodded solemnly. Jessica managed to smile. Exactly, in a quiet way. As night fell, Claire arrived to take Lily home. Jessica settled into the uncomfortable chair beside Emma's bed, watching her daughter's labored breathing, the IV tubes looking enormous against her small arm. Shortly after midnight, Jessica stepped into the hallway to call Claire for an update on Lily. When she returned, her heart stopped. Nathan Blackwood stood by Emma's bedside, his tall frame bent as he studied her sleeping face. And beside him, clutching a small teddy bear, was Charlotte. What are you doing here? Jessica whispered, torn between anger and relief at the sight of them. Nathan turned, his face haggard with exhaustion. Margaret called me. I came as soon as I heard. Charlotte broke away from her father, running to Jessica and wrapping her arms around her waist in a fierce hug. When she looked up, her eyes were filled with tears. I missed you, Charlotte whispered, the words clear despite her disuse. Jessica knelt, gathering the child in her arms. I missed you too, sweetheart. So much. Over Charlotte's shoulder, she met Nathan's gaze. The coldness was gone, replaced by something raw and uncertain. Can we talk? He asked quietly. In the small family waiting room, Nathan paced while Jessica sat rigidly on the edge of a chair. Charlotte had insisted on staying with Emma, holding her hand as she slept. I was wrong, Nathan said finally, the words seeming to cost him. About everything. Jessica waited, heart hammering. After you left, I had my own investigation done. Not by Eleanor's people, but by someone I trust. He ran a hand through his hair. Your father was framed, Jessica. He took the fall for Richard Harrington's illegal maneuvers, Margaret told me. Jessica said softly. What she didn't tell you is that I found documentation proving your father threatened to go public unless Harrington provided for his family after he was gone. Nathan's voice grew bitter. A promise that was clearly broken. Jessica thought of the years of struggle after her father's death, her mother working herself to illness trying to support 2 daughters alone. Why are you telling me this now? Nathan sat heavily beside her. Because I've spent 2 weeks watching Charlotte retreat back into silence. Because I realize I did to you exactly what was done to your father. Condemned without the full truth. His voice broke slightly. And because I miss you. All 3 of you. Before Jessica could respond, a nurse appeared in the doorway. Ms. Taylor? Your daughter is asking for you. And the little girl with her says she won't leave until Emma wakes up properly. The spring sunshine filtered through the windows of Sweet Twins, Jessica's small but elegant bakery in Boston's South End. It had been 3 months since Emma's hospitalization, and life had taken yet another unexpected turn. Jessica carefully piped delicate chocolate flourishes onto a wedding cake sample, the familiar motion soothing after a morning of meetings. Behind her, photographs of the twins and Charlotte adorned the wall, alongside the framed first dollar the shop had earned. The bell above the door chimed. Nathan entered, suit jacket discarded in the unusual heat, sleeves rolled up to reveal tanned forearms. The lease paperwork is finalized, he announced, setting his briefcase on a stool. You are officially the owner of this space, not just a tenant. Jessica smiled. It still feels strange having my own place. After Emma's recovery, Nathan had approached Jessica with a business proposal. He would invest as a silent minority partner in her bakery dream, providing the initial capital while she maintained creative control. She'd initially refused. Still, wary of becoming dependent on anyone, but his terms had been fair to the point of generous. You earned this, Jessica. I'm just the investor smart enough to recognize talent. His eyes softened. The girls are excited about their first day of school tomorrow. All 3 girls would be attending Westmont Academy together, the twins now legitimate scholarship recipients based on their entrance exam scores rather than Nathan's influence. Lily couldn't decide which backpack to bring. Jessica laughed. She changed her mind 5 times. They had settled into an unusual arrangement. Jessica and the twins had moved into a comfortable 3-bedroom house halfway between the bakery and Nathan's mansion. Charlotte split her time between both homes, the transitions eased by the knowledge that her 2 worlds remained connected. Nathan stepped closer, his hand covering Jessica's on the countertop. I've been thinking. The door chimed again as Mrs. Bennett, their elderly neighbor, entered. Jessica, dear, I'm here for my weekly eclair. Jessica greeted her with a warm smile, setting aside the moment with Nathan to wrap the woman's favorite treat. After Mrs. Bennett left, Nathan cleared his throat. As I was saying, Dad, Jessica! Charlotte burst through the door, followed by the twins and Margaret. All 3 girls wore matching sundresses, hair braided identically. We saw a puppy in the park, Lily announced without preamble. And we wrote a song about cupcakes, Emma added, her health fully restored. Charlotte, now speaking in full sentences though still quieter than Lily, held up a drawing. For the bakery wall, Nathan and Jessica exchanged amused glances over the girls' heads. Whatever he'd been about to say would have to wait. That evening, as Jessica walked with Nathan in the garden behind her new home, the girls visible through the window playing a board game, she finally asked the question that had lingered between them. What were you going to say at the bakery today? Nathan stopped walking, turning to face her. The setting sun cast golden light across his features, softening the lines that grief had etched there. I was going to say that this arrangement, this life we've pieced together from broken parts, is working better than I ever imagined. He took her hand. And I was going to ask if you'd consider making it more permanent. Jessica's breath caught. Nathan, not now, he said quickly. We've all been through too much to rush. But someday, when you're ready, I'm not going anywhere. As they rejoined the girls inside, Jessica realized they were building something precious, a family formed not by obligation or blood but by choice, forged in the fire of shared pain and healing. 1 year to the day after Jessica's bicycle had accidentally delivered her to the Blackwood mansion, a celebration filled the garden of her new home. Colorful balloons danced in the summer breeze as the twins blew out 8 candles on an elaborate cake Jessica had created especially for the occasion, half chocolate for Lily, half vanilla for Emma, with butterfly decorations that seemed almost too beautiful to cut. "Make a wish," Charlotte urged, clapping her hands as the candles flickered. The party celebrated more than just the twins' birthday. Sweet Twins had become one of Boston's most sought-after bakeries, with orders booked months in advance. Jessica had even been featured in a national culinary magazine, her story of resilience and reinvention touching hearts across the country. As dusk approached, Nathan gathered everyone for a toast. To new beginnings, second chances, and the family. "We've built together." Jessica watched the 3 girls playing tag across the lawn, their laughter a melody she'd once feared she might never hear again. Emma's health had completely returned. Lily's boundless energy now had constructive outlets through dance and music classes. And Charlotte, quiet, observant Charlotte, had blossomed into a thoughtful child who now spoke freely, especially with her sisters. "Jessica." Charlotte appeared beside her, slightly breathless from running. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart." Charlotte fidgeted with the charm bracelet on her wrist, a gift from Jessica on her 7th birthday. "Would it be okay if—" "Sometimes I called you Mom." Jessica's heart swelled almost painfully. "Charlotte, I would be honored, but what about your mother? Your real mother?" "Dad says Mom Victoria will always be in my heart," Charlotte said seriously. "But he also says that hearts can grow to love more people. And you." She looked up, her eyes shining. "You helped fix our broken hearts." Before Jessica could respond through her tears, Nathan approached, holding a small wrapped box. "I have one. More surprise," he said, presenting it to Jessica. Inside was a key and a photograph of a modest Cape Cod house with a wraparound porch. "This is," Jessica gasped. "Your childhood home," Nathan finished. "The bank foreclosed after your father died, but it came on the market last month, I thought." He suddenly looked uncertain. "I thought it might be a fitting place for us all to start again. Together." As the meaning of his words sank in, Jessica found herself speechless. The home she'd lost returned to her as a symbol of a new beginning. Later that evening, after the party had ended and the younger girls were asleep, Jessica and Nathan sat on the porch steps with mugs of coffee. "I never thought I'd find happiness again after Greg left," Jessica admitted. "I was so focused on survival, on just getting through each day." Nathan nodded. "After Victoria died, I thought that chapter of my life was permanently closed. And yet here we are." He took her hand, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm. "Life rarely gives us what we expect, does it? Sometimes it gives us exactly what we need instead." As the stars appeared overhead, Jessica reflected on the journey that had brought them here. A wrong turn on a rainy night, a grieving child, a case of mistaken identity, and the courage to face painful truths had somehow woven together to create this tapestry of happiness she'd never dared to imagine. The greatest deception, she realized, hadn't been her accidental role as Charlotte's nanny, or the tangled history of their families. It had been the fear that had nearly convinced them both that love was too dangerous to risk again.